coordinator at Just Say Yes since October of 2019 and is currently still living in Dallas with his wife of 6 months. So I feel like I should congratulate you because I feel like that is newlywed territory still. So congratulations. Welcome. We're super glad that you're here. And Miss Ashley Nesby has been with Just Say Yes for, you said, 3 years?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So she's originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and she obtained degrees from Michigan State University and the University of Southern California. So she is a cultured traveler and has spent the last 20 years as a minister, author, educator to young people, and currently resides in Dallas with her husband and 2 young kids. So life seems busy for you, man.
Yes.
Thank you so much for making time for us and being here. We're so glad that y'all are here. So being mentor coordinators with Just Say Yes, I know being a mentor coordinator with Youth Revive, I kind of know what that entails because we do the more traditional style of mentoring where it's a more experienced person in their career with a youth, but you guys at Just Say Yes do peer-to-peer mentoring. So what does being a mentor coordinator look like with Just Say Yes?
So for us, because we don't take the traditional approach of mentorship, which is one adult to a handful of younger students or people, we like to do peer-to-peer mentoring, which means that we walk alongside juniors and seniors, and we help train them, facilitate exercises so that they can actually become mentors in their own schools. And they will have a set of mentors or mentees that are freshmen or sophomores that they in turn mentor. So we're just there for support. We're there to help guide them, to give them the tools that they need to be mentors, and then they become the leaders within their own schools.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really exciting. What has been, I don't know, is there a regular thing that you guys do that you would describe as your favorite part of the experience of being a mentor coordinator? Like what do you appreciate most about what you do with Just Say Yes?
I would say for me is the connections. So you have, like, although I haven't been with Just Say Yes for a long time, I have experienced the students come in, they're a little timid, they're freshmen or sophomores, and then they get the opportunity to hang out with the seniors, and those relationships grow. I saw one where there was a lot of girls that wanted to be in the soccer team, and one of the mentors was actually the captain of the girls soccer team, and she was one of the seniors. And what was awesome is that just to kind of see that relationship develop and get them encourage them, hey, you guys want to be in soccer? Come on in. And how that relationship just grew. And as I watched some of those soccer games when I went to go visit, you can just see how they just flowed on the field and even off, like how they would just allow themselves to be mentored by even their team captain.
Yeah. Cool. Man, that's awesome. I love hearing you talk about, because all these relationships that you're talking about valuing are ones that you kind of are in the background in, like you're kind of the background orchestrator that's not immediately involved in these relationships that you're talking about appreciating so much, but rather you're watching it unfold and just appreciating that you had, a part in it, which is, I think, the whole point of us being a background character in a youth's life is that we may not necessarily be at the forefront or in the front seat of seeing their lives unfold, but we get to take a back seat and just kind of watch them grow into what they're meant to be and who they're meant to have proactive relationships with. And so I love hearing you guys talk about that. And it's really interesting to get some perspective from people who do peer-to-peer mentoring, just because it's not something that, first of all, it's not the most common form. And, it's not something that being a mentor coordinator with Youth Revive, I get lots of firsthand experience with. So thank you guys so much for your insight on that. To all of you guys watching, thank you so much for joining us. We're about to start kind of the Q&A portion. So before we do that, I want to give you a little bit of insight into our itinerary and how this is going to work. So you should see at the bottom of your screen, if you're on Zoom, Facebook, so sorry, can't see your questions. But if you're on Zoom, you should see a little Q&A tab at the very bottom of this screen. If you have any questions throughout our discussion time, feel free to put those in the Q&A tab. And for the last 10 minutes or so of our webinar, I will scroll through that Q&A tab and take a look at y'all's questions. And if we have that extra time, ask them to Ashley and Daniel if I can. But the way that this is going to unfold basically is it's going to go kind of interview style, and I'm going to be asking Ashley and Daniel questions, and we're just going to discuss this topic that we've selected for our webinar. If you guys are unaware of that, we're going to be discussing the difference between partnership and saviorship. The first time that I had the opportunity to talk to some folks with Just Say Yes about collaborating and getting this webinar started, I was really, really fascinated by this concept. And I thought that it was something that everyone possible should have the opportunity to learn about and hear about. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in that box below. And we're gonna go ahead and get started with talking about this. So Daniel and Ashley, I hope you guys are ready. Get loose. It's gonna be a fun ride. But let's talk about this concept of partnership and saviorship. So in mentoring, the way that it was explained to me by another member of the Just Say Yes team is that partnership is this idea of coming alongside a mentee and kind of guiding them properly and truly being their partner, which when I hear that word, when you hear the word partner, you really think equal, right? Whereas versus the word savior, you feel like there's some kind of imbalance of power, right? So if somebody is a savior, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like a firefighter and a kitten in a tree, right? Is that firefighter is that kitten's savior in the sense that it's helpless and it's in a vulnerable position and someone is coming in to save them. Versus a partner, you think of two people of equal status, equal capability. So as we're talking about this concept of saviorship versus partnership in mentoring, the idea of saviorship is that a mentor is coming into a mentee's life and there's an imbalance of power there. This mentor is coming in to rescue the mentee from their situation or their relationships or something like that. And so essentially what we're talking about is why that may not necessarily be the good thing that we think it to be. So the first thing I'm going to start off by asking you guys is, what are some ways that the concept of saviorship is harmful?
Harmful, I would say you never really teach a youth or a mentee to solve conflict on their own,
Right.
or really how to solve their life issues on their own. If you're constantly coming down and having to save them from stuff or keep them from certain things and doing them for them, it's like that saying that says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. You give a man a fish, yeah, you feed him for a day. So it's like you're saving him for that day, but what's going to happen when you're not around? They're not going to really they're not going to really know how to, solve these issues on their own, or what are they going to do when they're alone? How do they know how to deal with their emotions or with conflict around them? And when you really just walk alongside with them and say, hey, let's do this together. Let's look at this and how are we going to handle this situation? And although the mentor may know what to do in a situation like that, probing through different questions, you can get a mentee to find that solution on their own. They just need a little help and encouragement of just thinking and use your brain. Like, how are we going to do this? How would you do this? So I hope that makes sense. But that fishing is what comes to mind when it comes to the saviorship and partnership type of deal.
Right.
I think that most leaders who fall into the category of saviorship, they don't do it on purpose. Mm-hmm. Most people have a genuine desire to just help. Like, I just want to help. I just want to be there. I want to, give them what I have. I've been through something, and if I can stop you from going through it, like, I want to stop you. I want to tell you everything. I want to give you everything. And for the most part, I believe that comes from a very genuine place. However, one of the pitfalls is there's pitfalls for both the mentor and the mentee. So along the lines of what Daniel was saying, the mentee, they lose accountability. There's no accountability for themselves to say, this is where I made a mistake, and this is how I need to think through a process. And they don't have that future planning, because there's always someone that can reach down and say, don't worry, I got the answer for you. I have the solution. I can fix it for you. And so you kind of become codependent on your mentor, versus gaining that independence that we all need to navigate life. And then for the mentor, one of the pitfalls is that the mentor actually loses an opportunity to grow as well. It's hard to grow when you don't take a step back to say, okay, how can we do this together? What can I learn from you? What have I missed? Tell me more about that. Asking questions. I'm a firm believer that you have to ask questions. And as a savior, it's kind of like you're the superhero, you know, like you put on your cape, you rip your chest open, you're like, I have the answers, here I come. And if you have the answers, then you're not asking any questions, because you already have the answers. And we have to be able to continuously grow and gain from one another. And so the savior loses that opportunity when they step into that role versus being a partner and say, let's do this together.
Right. Ashley, I think that that's an awesome point. I think that you were spot on when you said that when you're coming at it from a savior mentality, you know, when you use the word partner, you're acknowledging the equality there, and you're acknowledging the equal ground. You're acknowledging that both parties can learn something from one another, right? Whereas, you know, a savior, it's a very nurturing mentality. Like you said, most of those people have the best intentions. It's a very parental attitude for the most part. Ideally, right? You know, in a perfect world, all parents would want the best for their kids and want to solve their kids' problems. So it's a very parental mentality, this one of saviorship. But it is kind of a lack of acknowledgement that that person can learn something from their mentee, because why would they, like you said, if they have all the answers? I think that that was spot on. So in that case, how would a mentor find the balance between guiding a student through their choices versus just swooping in and solving the problem for them? So, you know, you're in the position of the mentor and you're discussing with your mentee. They came to you with a conflict. They came to you with an issue. How do you find that very delicate balance between just telling them what to do to solve the issue versus helping them come up with their own solution?
I think, like Ashley said, is those questions are key. Is asking them questions, and through those questions, they'll find their answer. I don't know if or even simply talking. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you feel like you need to talk to someone. You pick up the phone, call somebody, or well, now that's what we have to do. Back when in the old days, when we could just meet with people and everything's fine and meet with for coffee.
The old days of February.
Yeah. You know, we sit down, we talk to somebody, and through talking, you're like, oh snap, like I know what to do in this situation. So sometimes even with talking, but it's those questions, like tell me a little bit more about the situation, or you know, what are some things that you can do? You know, get them to start thinking on what they can do in its particular situation. But it's those questions that's really going to help them start thinking about what to do in their situation. I mean, you can just tell them, yeah, you can just go do this, but how does that benefit you or the mentee? You know, there's really no growth in either person.
Right.
And in addition to what Daniel reiterated about asking questions, I think just having a small paradigm shift from I'm the mentor, this is my mentee, I'm here to help them, to I have a relationship with this person and I'm building a relationship with this person. It's it's a very small shift, but it has great impacts, because when I think about a person that I'm sitting down with to have coffee in February, or I'm texting, in July, I have a relationship with this person and I value this relationship. And because I value this relationship, I deal with you just a little bit differently than I would if I thought, like, you need my help. I'm your teacher, I'm your mentor. Like, listen, like, we've had this conversation before, you know what to do. Here are the steps. That's that teacher aspect, that mentor aspect. It is, like you said, it is a fine line, but just looking at the person as, this is a relationship that I value, that I'm building, that I care about, it'll tune your ear a little bit differently, and it'll change your language just a little bit.
Right. I think one really, really key element, we've been talking a lot about how the mentor can acknowledge that this is a partnership, but that mentee needs to feel like it's a partnership too, right? Like that student needs to feel that level ground. And I think one really practical key way of doing that is for the mentor to be vulnerable. Maybe not equally vulnerable, right? Because there does need to, that student does need to feel like their mentor is an older, wiser person that they can approach. So maybe not equally vulnerable, but vulnerable to the extent that that mentee feels trusted by their mentor as well. I think that it would help a lot if, in this relationship, it wasn't consistently the mentee coming to their mentor with problems and they don't know anything about their mentor's struggles. They don't know anything about the mentor's humanity. The mentor is just this kind of all-knowing, high-up figure who has all of the answers and is living this perfect life. But if the mentor can come to their mentee with struggles and be vulnerable with them and say, like, hey, that's something that I've dealt with too, or, I'm not really having the greatest time with this right now, but then lead by example by saying, or by doing and saying, but this is how I'm fixing it. This is how I'm solving it. This is the steps that I'm taking towards making this situation better for myself. And in doing that, you model for your student or for your mentee brokenness and vulnerability, and showing them that you trust them enough to bare yourself to them, but also proactive healing. And so that's awesome. I think that was perfect. That makes so much sense. In y'all's experience with mentoring, what is the most effective way so we've mentioned asking questions. This kind of ties in with the previous question, but what is the most effective way to give your input without overstepping boundaries? So in this, if you can remember being a teenager and maybe coming to a parent with an issue and getting, this is the worst, unsolicited advice, right? And whenever your parent or your grandma or your youth pastor or whoever, your school counselor would give you advice when you didn't ask, you feel like a boundary was crossed. You feel kind of disrespected because it's like, well, I just wanted to come to you as a friend. I just wanted to come to you as a person and tell you what I was going through. But now you're lecturing me. Now you're giving me a sermon when I didn't ask for it. So what is the most effective way to give your mentee that input without crossing a boundary or disrespecting them?
I'll go. I think just for me personally, I don't know if there's a such thing as the most effective way when it comes to relationships, because they're subjective.
Right.
So what's effective for you might be like, just give it to me straightforward. Like, come on now, you know better. Your approach might be different from how someone else would receive it. However, one thing that I have found helpful is, as you already said, Joy, is being transparent, being a little bit vulnerable, being genuine, sharing your stories, saying like, hey, look, there's no shame here. I've been there before, or I understand those feelings because this is what I've gone through. Mm-hmm. So you can tell me more about what you've gone through, and then let's work through it together.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything you want to add, Daniel?
I think I know with time, the key word thing here is relationship. It's like, you know, if you've built a relationship, you've built it up to a certain point to where you can talk to one another.
Mhm.
You know, if I build a relationship with someone, it's up to me or that person. You know, is that person, you know, asking me like, hey, how are you doing this day? Or how are you doing in this area? Or, you know, how's this going on? You kind of vaguely know a little bit, but you kind of try to probe that like, hey, how's everything at home? And then try to get them from them. Like, and you'll be able to notice it. You know, some people are very short, others are, they'll go into it. But you know, I think with time, as you build a relationship, as you open up your heart and transparent, I think that a mentee is can open up more. One thing I've noticed about young people, you know, from being when I used to be a youth leader, is that you come in with all the great attitude, and but they're not really clicking, they're not really vibing with you. You know, one thing I've noticed is that they want consistency. They want to see that you actually care and you're always there. So when they actually have something to say, they want to be able to know that yeah, he's going to listen or she is going to listen because they're always there, and the person's always been there. I have a relationship that I have with a young man that although I'm not as young as youth leader, I stopped being his youth leader like 3 years ago. Like that guy still comes and he'll text me and he's like, hey dude, I love you so much, thank you for this or that. And it's because I was able to be consistent for a year or 2 years of his life where he was completely quiet, and I'm like, I've gained nothing out of this relationship. But like 2 years later, it's like, oh snap, like this guy has a lot to say. And I didn't know that I marked his life until he actually said something. And the conversations in those 2 years were super short. Like they weren't even in depth. We tried getting going into depth. And then all of a sudden now he's like, dude, I'm so grateful for your life. He's already graduated high school, and you know, he's also going to CFNI. And so it's awesome how that relationship grew. And I thought that I was, you know, I was new to the whole mentoring thing. I haven't, you know, having someone younger than me. And um, but I mean, imagine that it took 2 years. So do you have the patience for it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Mentorship is definitely the long game.
Yeah,
It's the long game. You have to be patient.
yeah, definitely.
That's true. That's very true. That's why I have so much respect for organizations like, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but organizations like Mercy Street that match up a student to a mentor when that student is in fourth grade, and they hold that mentor to a of being there through their high school graduation. And the fruit of organizations like that, it's so apparent and it's so effective because while yes, the temporary, I definitely believe that there's merit to both. That short-term mentorship can definitely be effective depending on both people, depending on the age and stage of life of the mentee and what they're willing to absorb from their mentor and stuff like that. But there's so much beauty in a long game relationship, like you said, Ashley, and because students, young people evolve, right? And while if you have a short-term relationship with someone, you can contribute to who they are at the time, but next year they're going to be somebody different and they're going to need different things. And actually, like you said, it's subjective, the way that people receive input, right? And the way that people take advice, and seeing the evolution of that young person, they could be a lot more receptive to your input and a lot more receptive to your advice if like you were saying, Daniel, you've shown that you're consistent, and B, they're going to change as a person, so the way that they receive that input is going to change with them. um, One thing that a tactic that I personally use, like not even in my mentor mentee relationships, but just in my relationships with my friends, whether I'm the one who needs to talk to somebody or I'm listening, is at the jump of the conversation to ask, okay, you're coming to me with this issue. Do you want my input today? Or do you need a listening ear? Is
Yeah,
that what you need? Because whatever it is that you need today, I can provide it. And I think one other detriment of this saviorship mentality is that somebody with a saviorship mentality tends to think that they are entitled to give their advice constantly and that their advice is always welcome. And like we discussed, just a few minutes ago, this idea of unsolicited advice and how it can be one of the most common forms of disrespect to a young person, is the idea that they're always looking for your advice. They're not. Sometimes they really just need a listening ear. And to say that from the jump, I think can open their hearts and respect for you so much more if they hear, okay, this person isn't just here to preach to me. This person isn't just here to save me. Like, it's okay if they just listen to me and have nothing to say at the end of it, And I found that to be one of the most effective tactics when it comes to relationships and that exchange of vulnerability. So what do you think, how do y'all think a mentor could tell if they're crossing the line into that saviorship territory? Like, what are red flags? What are things that they need to watch out for to make sure that they're not being detrimental to their mentee by coming in with this saviorship mentality?
I would say when their mentee is constantly coming up to you to try to solve their problems, and they're not really working stuff out on their own. Mm-hmm. I think that's for me. That's something that if I notice as someone, I'm mentoring somebody, and they're constantly going up to me, it's like, hey, so this happened. It's a difference when someone asks me, hey, so in a situation like this, kind of talk the issue through. Like, I would do this, but I'm not so sure because so and so. Or but for me, I would think if the mentee is constantly coming up to the mentor, the word saviorship, try to save them from their issues. Like, hey, can you do this for me? Rather than, hey, so I need you to help. I need you to guide me through this. Mm-hmm. I need you to, I want to do it on my own, but I need to learn how. There was this, I went through this devotion a couple months back, and it talks about the relationship between Paul and Timothy, two Bible characters for listeners that don't know. So Paul and Timothy have this relationship where Paul at first shows him how to do it. So he's first doing it for him, but then it goes into a relationship where he's doing it alongside him. And then it matures into where it's like, now he's doing it on his own, but he's kind of mentoring him from a distance. So we can first start with, let me show you how to do it. And then it's like, okay, now let's do it together. And okay, now whenever you go through that situation, I'm going to be right here, but you're going to be you're going to be solving that issue, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Right. Makes a lot of
sense. Yeah, Daniel, I think that's so good, that looking at not necessarily the closeness of your relationship, but the proximity. Yeah. So what I mean by that is we can be tight, we can be friends and talk, we vibe, we get one another, we have a great relationship, but over time, you should be coming to me less and less for what we've been working on. Right. Your proximity to me with the issues or with wherever you are in your walk in life, you should be growing through that. You should be growing how to think through that. But if you're calling me every other day or every time I see you, it's what do I do? What do I do? Like, I'm still dating this crazy person. Like, okay, I there's only so many times I can give you the answers anyways, but I've never looked at it like that before. So thanks, Daniel. I do also think that just in your general conversations, how quick are you to give an answer You know what they say about you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. That's definitely still applies to mentorship and trying to not fall into that savior category. Is just saying like, how much am I listening versus, you know, just talking. And I think we have to set up safeguards as mentors to stop that. So one of the safeguards that I set up with my mentees is anytime we have a conversation and there's like an issue or something they want to talk through, my first thing to do is to ask them a question. What have you done already? Mm-hmm. And then walk me through that process. So now I'm just listening and letting them talk through it and letting them come up with the solutions. Oh, I didn't try this, or I didn't even think about that, or, you know, versus saying, here's the answer.
Yeah. Additionally, like just to tag onto that, Ashley, I think one red flag is if when you ask that question, what have you done already? And consistently every time they're like,
well, I called you.
I was waiting for you. Yeah. I think that is a huge red flag because it's like, I am not the first resort. You know, like you are, because I'm not necessarily sure what age range exactly Just Say Yes works with. Youth Revive, we work with high schoolers. And so they old enough to try something by themselves first. And while, yes, we do want to be there and we do want to, it's an honor to be the person that a young person turns to in times of conflict. If we are consistently their first, the first person that they run to when they have an issue and they haven't put any thought into it themselves, I would agree that that's a red flag. Additionally, I would say if your mentee is not sharing any of their victories with you and are only coming to you with problems and are only coming to you with conflict, I would say that that's a big indicator that the relationship is simply built on finding solutions. And nothing more. If there's not sharing of anything else, any other news, if the only thing that you know about your mentee is what they're struggling with consistently, you don't know what they enjoy, you don't know what's going good for them. I would say that that's a red flag because that means two things, right? That means that they're only coming to you with the bad stuff. They don't feel a need to share the good stuff with you because why would you share that with your savior? You know, your savior is there to save you. So you don't come to them with the stuff that's already fixed. You don't come to them with the stuff that doesn't need fixing. You don't call maintenance if your sink's working fine. So I would say that like that's something that I observe often as a red flag is if I don't know the good things about you, you know?
Yeah, that's good, Joy. That's good.
Okay, so let's talk about this is something that I personally am very passionate about, especially when it comes to matching up mentors with mentees that, you know, obviously are outside of their family unit, anything like that. Let's talk about parents. Because someone coming in with a saviorship mentality, right? It's natural that there's going to be, that the parent's going to be involved to some degree, especially if, here's something that we see really often, right? A mentee and a mentor are matched up and the mentee views their mentor as like an escape from their parent, right? They come and they'll complain about their parent, things like that, which is normal. That's what young people do. They don't get along with their parents. But someone with a saviorship mentality, it's so easy, right? To slip into the, oh man, like, you know, your parents should be doing this differently and, you know, things like that. And to want to save them from their home situation, those are difficult emotions to navigate for a mentor when you have to stand from the outside looking in and see where that child is lacking regarding love or regarding input from their parent, but you can't really come in and fill those gaps because those are overstepping boundaries, right? So how do we, this idea of saviorship versus partnership, we want to be the partner of the mentee, but we also need to be the partner of the parent, because this is like, it takes a village to raise a child, right? This is a team effort. You want to come alongside the parent and be an asset to them, be an accessory to them, be a complement to them, not undermine them and take over their role. So I guess I just want to, I don't really have specific questions for you guys about this. I think I just want to get your thoughts and get your input on how to properly navigate situations like when you know that a mentee's parent is lacking in certain things or isn't doing their job correctly, honestly, but you can't overstep those boundaries. How do we as mentors go about those situations? Because I think that just involves some really complicated emotions for us.
Yeah, so for us, because we do peer-to-peer mentoring, a lot of times we're working with older students and trying to help them mentor younger students. It's a pitfall for both. It can be a pitfall for both the junior and senior mentor, as well as us, the mentor coordinators. So like you said, what we try to do is build a relationship of some sort, even if it's a very basic, hi, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, I'm working with your child, I love to meet with you, or, you know, here's some information about what's going on. Like there has to be some point of contact with the parent so that they know that you're here to support them and their child. And some parents who know they need help, they'll reach out to you and say like, hey, can you, I don't know what to do. Can you talk to her or can you help them? And then other parents are just completely unaware for whatever reason, one or another. And you may never, you know, hear from them or connect with them. And like, it's tough. It is really tough, but I guess that's part of our role as mentors is to help develop that toolkit of navigating life. And for this particular mentee, their life situation happens to be one with maybe apathetic parents or busy parents or absent parents, whatever it may be. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to take their role, but I am here to help give you whatever tools that you may need to think through this, you know, to live through it, to survive above it, you know? Mm-hmm. So I can't pull you out, but I can walk with you as you go through this part of your life.
Right.
Yeah. Like Ashley said, like there's got to be some kind of relationship or connection with the parent. You know, when I think of that, it's you know, kind of to paint a picture. It's like when a child goes up to the mom and says, "Hey, I want a cookie," and then, "Well, no," and then goes up to the dad. It's like, "Hey, Dad, I want a cookie." It's like, "Okay, here's a cookie." You know, it's like, well, instead of, "Well, what did your mom say?" You know, so what did your mom say about this situation, and how did you guys solve this, or you know, what did you think when your mom said this? That, you know, not contradicting the parent, because you're in partnership with the parent, and really just being that support for the parent. I know that at least for me in my experience when mentoring youth, you know, I had a relationship with the parents. You know, I would talk with the parents like, you know, hey, you know, I just happen to click very well with the parents. Like I can call them bro or something, you know, it's like, hey bro, how's so-and-so doing in school, or how's so-and-so doing? So that helps me kind of tailor the conversation for the next time that I meet with a mentee. So that also helps a lot, is being in communication with the parent, and knowing, kind of having a general idea what's going on at home, and saying, well, what did your mom or what did your dad say, and how did you feel when they said that? And just kind of get them to look at, you know, it's hard being a young person and you hear something from a parent, and you know, you're like, well, they don't understand, you know. And it's like, well, okay, look, try to think about why they would say that. You know, think a little bit further. Think of, you know, they look at the first, some young people look at the first, you know, hour of their life. What am I, you know, instead of thinking of the next year, 2, 3, how that one decision is going to benefit them in the future. So maybe going out with their friends at 11 o'clock at night, it's like, okay, look, that's probably not the best idea, and here's why.
Yeah. Daniel, I really liked what you said about, I really liked when you touch on the idea of reaching out to the parent yourself and asking them questions about uh, their child, because I think that that's something that mentors really, really tend to overlook. Is I think oftentimes we are so focused, and it comes from a good place, you know. We're so focused on forming our own relationship with that child and forming an independent relationship with that child that sometimes we can overlook the fact that, like, hey, this parent's been doing this for a solid 14, 15 years with this kid, and they know this kid well, so it's okay to, you know, swoop in and ask, hey, you know, how's he doing? How's he doing in school? How's he doing in sports? Last week he came to me with, you know, this issue has it gotten better since the last time I've seen them? Things like that. And I think that in doing that, the parent will feel very validated by us, just because it's like, yes, this is somebody who we brought on board to formulate a relationship with my kid, but they're not ignoring me. They're respecting my authority, they're respecting my position, they're respecting the years of work that I've put into raising this kid. They're not here to take that away from me, they're here to compliment me. And in a lot of ways, coming alongside a student as a mentor, you're coming alongside that whole family, right? Because you're there to attribute to the work that's already been put into raising them, and not to take away from it, not to veer from the path of the things that they've been learning up till the point where they met you, but to enhance the situation and even to take some pressure off of that parent, right? So I really like the idea of the mentor reaching out to the parent directly.
And I just want to reiterate that, like, sometimes that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's not, because I've had youth who I was mentoring that they were staying in group homes because the parent lost the house, or the mother was in and out of jail. So they were constantly bouncing from, you know, the auntie's house to this person's house to that person's house, or the parent was struggling with addiction. So sometimes they were lucid and available, and other times they just weren't, you know. Even if that's the case, like you said, it's, you partner, kind of, when you partner with a person, you partner with their family, you know. And sometimes their family are the other counselors at school who are helping that student, or it's the grandparents, or it's the aunties, or it's the cousins. It's just like whatever adult that youth has in their life that is trying to help, that's the person that you want to try to reach out to say, hey, I'm also here, you know, to support, and just to let you know that I'm doing my best to impart hope into this young person's life as well. So it might not be the mom or dad, but hopefully they have at least one trusted adult. And if you're the only trusted adult in their lives, then, like I said, that's where that toolkit comes in. Okay, let's help you navigate your life. It's tough, but there is life beyond where you are right now, and I want to help you get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, Ashley, I think one thing that I realized, like, as you were speaking and as you were saying that, is that I think it's the mentor's responsibility to make themselves aware of who else cares about this child and not depend on the child's word for that. Because, you know, how often is, if you think back to when you were younger, chances are you didn't realize the extent to which the people raising you cared about you and were invested in you, right? Like Daniel, the example that you were giving about that youth student, who during the time that you were their youth leader, youth pastor, whatever your position was or connection to them was, they didn't realize how deeply devoted you were to them until you were no longer in that position. And they were like, shoot, Daniel was like kind of there for me, huh? I better take advantage of that. But a lot of the times these kids are blind to the love that's surrounding them. And so I think, Ashley, it's the mentor's responsibility to notice that for themselves rather than going on the child's word, because that it's likely that it'll be misinformed. You know, how common is it to hear like, oh, well, my mom just doesn't care about me.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, mom is just like not there because she's busting her butt trying to provide, you know, and it's not necessarily about not caring. It's just elements of life that the child doesn't see that I think it's our responsibility to make ourselves aware of. And then hopefully, ideally, opening the kids' eyes to that, right? And being like, hey, you're actually so, so loved and you're actually so, so cared for. It just may not be in the most obvious ways. And so, because I think that that's where, because this idea of saviorship, it goes on both ends, right? It's dangerous if the mentor sees themselves as a savior. It's also very dangerous, as we discussed, if the mentee sees that person as a savior, right? And I think one way to avoid that is by making sure that they know that we are not the only person around that cares for them. Say like, hey, I am not the end all be all. Auntie cares for you, grandma cares for you, you know, school counselor, school nurse. I have noticed that they care for you, and turning their attention to the assets that they do have. That's one thing that Youth Revive is really, really passionate about, is empowering students by making them aware of the connections that they have, and making sure that they're not blind to it. So I think that I'm really grateful for the opportunity that we've had to connect with people who do peer-to-peer mentoring, and just hearing that I personally, you know, can't speak for anyone watching live on Facebook or anything like that, but I personally have gained so much fresh insight into this idea of mentoring and how multifaceted it is through you guys. So thank you guys again so, so much for being here and giving me your time and energy. Okay, so we're at 12:53. So before we jump off, is there anything that you guys would like to add? If you guys want to say anything about Just Say Yes, you're more than welcome to, or just anything that we discussed. If there's anything that you want to tag on to the end, you are more than welcome to do that.
Thank you so much for having us, inviting us. Just Say Yes. We would love for you guys to check us out. You can go to our website at justsayyes.org. We're all about growing value and vision in youth by combating isolation and imparting hope. That right now, that isolation piece is key. So we just want to encourage everyone out there who's already a mentor, you're working with youth, that even as this time kind of drags on with kind of being stuck in the house quarantine, to keep reaching out to those young people, keep encouraging them, keep helping, keep being there, keep showing up, even if it's via text, just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for that opportunity. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's awesome to have a conversation with other people about their passion for young people. You know, their passion for mentoring, mentoring young people, because it's needed, and I definitely want to help build leaders and, you know, build strong people for the day of tomorrow.
Absolutely, absolutely. To all of you guys who weren't able to make it on this Zoom or watching on Facebook, this is going to be made available on YouTube later. We have been recording, so you guys have been very watched the entire time. I hope that makes you feel uncomfortable and uneasy. But this recording will be available on YouTube. So for those of you guys who are here now or watching on Facebook Live, thank you so, so much for coming. And those of you who aren't, we really hope that watching this later is going to be an asset to you to some degree. So just speaking for Youth Revive, hope you guys don't mind if I plug real quick, but our mentorship program is going to be launching soon. We are so, so excited about it. And you can learn more about it through an event that we're going to have over the end of this month and the beginning of August, called Experience Youth Revive. And essentially what this is going to be is a Zoom call just like this. We're going to do it virtually, keep everyone safe. But I essentially am just going to be talking about the process of launching this mentorship program and the things that we've considered and the work that's gone into launching this program, and how you can get involved and what life is going to look like as a Youth Revive mentor. So be on the lookout for an email about that. Again, look into Just Say Yes. What they do is different from us, and I love it. It's awesome. It's so, so very needed. just this idea of cutting off isolation and connecting young people to one another. It's so necessary. I love the work that you guys do. Keep it up. And thank you so, so much for joining us. We'll keep in contact, and I just really hope that you guys have a blessed rest of your day. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'll see y'all later.
Bye.